Welcome back to Spotlight by the Intelligence. I'm here with Phil Aram, aka Tanoshi. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing amazing. It's a beautiful sunny day here in San Diego where I live.
Wish I could say the same. It's like blisteringly cold out, snowing all weekend here. I want to be where you are.
Oh man, where are you? What state are you in?
I'm in Salt Lake County, Utah, posted in
Yeah,
Taylorsville specifically, but I'm downtown every
dude,
weekend. So
that's
I
awesome. I worked for a winter. I worked at a ski resort in Park City,
How
Utah.
did you like that gig?
It was a pretty good gig. I found a really good Christian community there who actually let me live in their home for a little bit. It was really nice. Everyone there, the Mormons, the Christians, the atheists, everyone there is so friendly. They're all so nice.
I've lived in a lot of different places, and I find myself coming back to Salt Lake as just like a good place to be. Right? I'm an outdoorsy type of person. I like
Yeah.
the scenery, but the community really shines here.
Yeah.
Let's a little bit less about me and a little bit more about you, right? Maybe you could like kick us off with a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Tanoshi on all streaming platforms, and basically I just make lo-fi of songs that I enjoy. It ends up being Pokemon songs that I'm turning into lo-fi beats. But sometimes I do Lord of the Rings, different animes, just sometimes just normal songs that I just love. And I don't know if the audience is very familiar with like this genre of there's like this group of people out there who just find songs that they love and they make it into a instrumental lo-fi beat, and there's a huge audience for it right now, and it's such like a formulaic kind of like easy gig to do that I just love it because I get to, for Pokemon, for example, I grew up playing these Pokemon games, and they have these soundtracks that play while you play the video game. So they're kind of like ingrained in my head, and like they bring back these certain like emotions and feelings and memories, and of like being younger, being a kid, and it's really like therapeutic almost to make these songs into a really chill lo-fi beat with a hip hop beat in the background, and so that's basically what I do. Yeah.
Is it fair to call you then a professional remixer?
Uh, Remixer legally is actually the wrong term because remixing is when you use the audio that already exists. And that's not allowed unless you have like the permission from the original producer or person who owns like the rights to the song. What I do is just maybe I'm a professional cover artist because when you're doing covers, you're recreating the audio completely from scratch. The good thing about stuff like Pokemon, though, is that generations 1 through 5, I believe, and other Game Boy games also do this. They use MIDI data. They use MIDI files to save on like memory in those little old cartridges they used to use. So people have data mined the MIDI from all those old games. And if you don't know what MIDI is, it's basically like a file that tells a digital audio workstation like Ableton or FL Studios to play certain notes on a keyboard. So you could like people have data mined all the MIDI from these old games, and you could drag them into your digital audio workstation, and you have basically the entire composition of all of these old tracks right inside of your digital audio workstation. So so doing covers and recreating the audio from scratch, or reimagining the audio however you want to do it, is actually like super smooth and easy if you get the MIDI for it. But yeah, professional cover artist is probably where it's at.
No, I like it. It definitely sounds like there's a market for it. I've definitely found myself experiencing both like the nostalgia and the novelty of hearing like a chill lo-fi cover. I heard this Wii remix lo-fi cover that I fell in love with, and this seems right up that alley. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to, so you kind of segued right into MIDI and like its use in a digital audio workstation, and I think that's really important because I think a lot of people have this idea of production being sort of just like a cut and paste of different sound arrangements, right? And
Uh-huh.
I'm a sound designer by trade, or at least like one of
Oh,
my many
wow.
trades, and so I'm a big fan of MIDI. I like to program notes and put them in instruments that I made. How did you
Oh, yeah.
how do you tend to incorporate that into your production process?
The production process I have is pretty well refined at this point, because I've been doing this for it's 2025, so I've been doing this now for three full doing it full time for 3 years. The way I do it is I find a song I really enjoy and I think could do well in the lo-fi format, and first thing I do is get the main melody just soloed, like just in the MIDI. I'm doing like main melody, and sometimes the main melody, like in Stardew Valley for example, has lots of like vibrato parts and then has lots of like glides and stuff. So in MIDI specifically, it starts getting really complicated in the MIDI if you're like having to automate all the glides and all those things. um the second thing I do is I usually do the drums second before doing what I call the rhythm, or what other people would call the chords. So I do the drums, and that's when I am just doing the basically like taking a kick and throwing it onto the thing as like an actual waveform. And I do all the drums using like audio just because it's easier to kind of work with it, in my opinion, than doing the drum track MIDI. But after I do the drums and the melody, then I can imagine where all the chords, or what I call the rhythm, go. So then I work on all that. And then next after that is when I work on the bass. And the reason I work on the bass after is because the way I like doing the bass, and I think it kind of gives Tanoshi its sound, is that I like to play around everything with the bass. Like, sometimes it's just, okay, I'm just going to throw it wherever the kick is. But then other times it's like playing around the rhythm of the rhythm chords. And the very last thing I do is what I call all of this, the ear candy, which is going to be like vinyl sounds, a bunch of like little sound effects. Sometimes it's like little like retro gaming sound effects. There's this one by Cymatics that's like really good and has all these different retro sounds that I love. And then sweepers, and then at the very end, I do these like glitches and skips. I actually, after I have all that stuff, including the ear candy, I export the entire project and put it into a new file or new project setting. And then I'll like do a bunch of like messing around with like duplicating parts so that there's what I call like glitches and skips. And when you get that on like the I guess like using the grid to make sure it's all in time, all the glitches, it can like sound really cool, and you can come up with some really cool stuff doing that.
Interesting. I've heard people describe that process of exporting, re-importing, resampling is how I tend to see it, like on a micro
Yeah,
in DAW.
exactly.
How did you discover that technique, and how did it become like a staple of what you do? Because it sounds like you've got everything pretty itemized and laid out, which I really appreciate, and I'm sure other people will too.
Yeah, well, I realized I was gonna need a procedure. Actually, so I said I started like Tanoshi back in like 2022, but actually, the first time I ever did lo-fi was all the way back in 2019. With you, you might not know this, but my brother is my oldest. I have three older brothers, and my oldest is Steven, aka Closed on Sunday, and he's a Star Wars lo-fi artist. And the back in 2019, he told me, Phil, dude, we should do this lo-fi thing. And he came up, he found a song that he think would work, and it was Cantina Band from Star Wars, which is like a classic for especially anybody who has ever played the Star Wars Lego games. It's the Cantina Band is the theme that's playing like while you're in the stage selection screen. And it's very iconic. So and it's so simple too. So we created like a procedure where first we do the melody, and then we do the drums, and then the rhythm chords, and then we kind of layer on these different things. And that's where the procedure came from, and it worked so well. And that song right now, I'm gonna look it up real quick because I don't want to get it wrong, but let's just see how many streams it's sitting at. Closed on Sunday. Cantina Band is sitting at 13 million streams now. So and we did that song also in less than 24 hours. We literally created it from start to scratch. And if you listen to it, it's such a simple song. And that's where, and I actually took a break. So I took a 3-year break after working on that song with Closed on Sunday. I didn't think anything was going to come from it. But when Close on Sunday started taking off, and now he's at over 500,000 monthly listeners, I was like, dude, I've got to do this for myself. And it actually took me falling off a cliff at a different ski resort. It was in South Lake Tahoe. I fell off a little slope, like it was like an ice ledge. I was doing some work up here, slid down, and then free fell for 15 feet, landed on my butt, broke my pelvic ring, uh, and I was bedridden. And that's when I started Tanoshi. And then that's when I started making the Pokemon Lo-Fi. It kind of slowly built up and grew. And I remember that procedure from back when Close on Sunday and I made Cantina Band together. So that's where the procedure has come from, and it works so well. And I think a lot of people don't like the idea of procedures because this is like an artistic, outlet where you're supposed to be being all creative and stuff. But the way I see it is that, even an artist wants to have like a canvas to paint on. There's got to be, if you don't set any limits for yourself and there's no rules, then what you get is this like weird abstract art. Like imagine if you tried making a song without BPM, like it would just not, or you're not like sticking to the 12 semitone, like the 12 note Western scale, you've got to set yourself boundaries and rules. And that's when you can let creativity blossom, is when you break the rules in creative ways, So that's why I love having that procedure as well.
Definitely. I think you touched on something really important. In fact, I think it was a talk with Oat Mellow, who I'm sure talked about giving himself false constraints to operate within, because it really pushes your creative levels up a step when you have to try and figure out workarounds. I think lots of people from like the era have tried like the one sample challenge and stuff like that. I think gimmicks like that, which is not a dig to call them gimmicks, can be just the thing to like push past a creative block. So there's honestly, if I can wax poetic here for a second, so I did the free form artistry, and I made like a couple songs that never got released over like literally like a 10-year period. And as soon as I started applying like a formulaic procedure to like, this is what I work on, this is how I know when it's done, music started getting released. It's like, you gotta,
yes, bro, yes.
So I really love the history that's woven into the story of Tanoshi. You're like, I fell off a cliff, Pokemon Lofi. Incredible. I was gonna say, if I can meet you with kind of like a kindred story, I don't know if you'll be able to see it super well on my webcam, but I actually like sliced my hand open pretty good. I don't know if you can see the scar.
Dude, I see the scar. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I was making breakfast and accidentally put a ceramic plate shard through 4 tendons. And so while I'm like immobilized with one arm, like in a foam block, I'm making like rhythm dubstep with my right hand on my laptop. And that's how I was like, you never know what you're cut out for, I think, until you have something that takes you out of your routine and you're just stuck alone with your own thoughts, and creative expression is your only way to like participate. Sorry to go off on a tangent there. I was just
I
wow.
love that, dude. That's insane, dude.
Maybe you could tell me a little bit more about your history. So I really liked the flashes back to like growing up playing Game Boy as a kid, working at a ski resort. Like, what led you, aside from the Star Wars project that took off, what kind of developed your interest in music early on?
Yeah, so actually, me and my 3 older brothers, we all had a dad who did music lessons our entire childhood. We grew up in a house where the garage had been transformed literally into a music studio. And there's I think 4 different rooms. There's a room dedicated to drums, a room like dedicated to guitar, another one to vocals, and all of them had like windows and stuff. Like we literally had a music studio growing up, and a father who like really wanted all of us to be musically literate. So I was reading music by the time I was 5 years old. Unfortunately, I became an absolute rebel, and by 7 years old, I did not know how to read a single note on sheet music, and I'd completely lost it from 7 years old to like 15 years old. I had no interest in music. Like I really rebelled against it. Earlier on, me and my brothers were like literally in a boy band together where I was playing the piano. My brother Tim was on drums. Matthew was on electric guitar. And then my brother Steven, who's closed on Sunday, he was on the bass guitar. And all of us had microphones and we'd all sing songs at like birthday parties and stuff. We were like a band together, you know? But yeah, I think all of us got kind of annoyed that it felt like it was being pushed on us. So all of us sort of like withdrew kind of. I think Steven and Tim kept up with the music the best because Tim, my brother Tim, he's a lawyer, but he is an incredible drummer. He's literally like a world-class drummer in my opinion. He's just insane, but he does lawyer work. So he just does the drumming sort of like for fun on like the weekends and stuff. Steven has since he became an adult, he became like an audio engineer who was working at a mega church here in San Diego called Shadow Mountain for a while with a sort of like a celebrity pastor named Dr. David Jeremiah. And he was like the audio engineer there doing the sound for like these every Sunday, church service. It's a huge concert and event, and there's so much audio stuff going on. So he became a master at that. And then he started editing podcasts and stuff. For me, when I graduated high school, I had no thought that I'd ever do music and make money doing it at all. Cause I felt like I wasn't that good. I never spent time trying to refine my skills at all. So I just started doing seasonal jobs around the country. I started off when I was 19. I went up to Alaska and they called me Grill Phil up there. I worked at a place in Skagway, Alaska, where I was grilling up sockeye salmon for people, working literally like 15 hours a day. I thought it was awesome. It was like super fun. And then I went down to Utah for the winter gig, and then I went somewhere else for the summer gig, and then a winter gig, and I just kept on doing that back and forth, literally from 2019 to 2024 last year. And I only recently went to the music full time because now Tanoshi's sitting somewhere around like 180,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. And now that provides enough income every month where I can do this full time. So I'm stoked about it.
You mentioned something I think a lot of people could stand to benefit from, which is like the discernment of being able to tell when you're ready to go full time. So you said you kind of watched the numbers a little bit and made this realization, like, holy shit, I can do this actually. I can make music for a living. At what point, like, do you think, in your professional opinion, is it lucrative for people to quit their jobs and start working music full time? Like,
this is something I think this is actually important no matter what industry you're in. Because when it comes to the entrepreneurial thing, like you can literally be you could be in puppet making. You could just be like in your basement making like puppets and selling them on eBay or something, right? Like this is true for any industry. For the music, I thought of like the numbers as like ocean waves, like it's sort of like still you put in water into the bucket. That's the monthly listeners. And it's not even you putting it there. It's like it's really not up to you. And that's the funniest thing about this music thing is that like everyone could just stop listening tomorrow, which is kind of scary. But with going full time, the point that I had to reach was that I had a 6-month emergency saved. Like, I think budgeting is also super important for anybody who wants to go full time on something where they're truly like independent, providing for themselves, is that you need some kind of cushion if everything falls to shit and like you're absolutely screwed. So a 6-month emergency fund is pretty important in my opinion. But then to make sure you know the cost of living for you every month. So for me, the cost of living was like something around like $2,000, but I needed to wait until I was hitting $5,000 a month to go absolutely full time, because then I was over double the cost of living, right? And I think that's a pretty good number, but everyone has their own like risk tolerance. Some people are super lucky and they live at home with their parents and their cost of living could be like $600. So they could go full time, I guess, when they hit like $1,000 a month or something. But it's really different for everyone, but you've got to make sure you're at least covering your cost of living by with a significant extra margin, because these waves, they come through. 1 month could be $6,000 for me. Another month, this past month was only $3,000. It's because the holiday season. I don't know if you know, but whenever December rolls around, it's like the darkest month for us, like musicians on Spotify, because suddenly like Mariah Carey is like a giant vacuum sucking out all the
You took
listeners
the
from
words
our
right
like profiles. What'd you
literally,
say?
you took the words right out of my mouth. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to. I was just, literally Mariah Carey and Michael Bublé just come in and scooping up all of the listeners during that time period. I can't
Right.
stand Christmas music. Not even Christmas lo-fi does it for me.
It's funny because it's like we're all the Grinch. Like all the independent artists are like the Grinch who like hate Christmas, because it's like, oh man, like it's gonna be like it's gonna be a rough month. We're gonna have to stick to the budget pretty close here. Yeah.
I really liked the idea you kind of pitched of this emphasis on cost of living and safety net compared to what, I assume you're probably taking an average of the months because it's like you said, a wave. And like
Exactly.
following like, like unpredictable to some extent stock market trends. Like you're like, it looks
Yeah.
like it's doing good, but it has to do this much over good to justify the risk behind it. So it
Yeah.
really is a proportion that you have to assess. Look at the income that you're making. I guess what I would ask then is what were you doing during the period in which you were making music, but still needed additional money to get by?
Yeah, I was doing the seasonal work, which this is actually one of the reason, like I use my everyone in life has some sort of competitive advantage somewhere. And my competitive advantage for a long time was that I had zero responsibilities in life. Like I dropped $20,000 on a van in 2021, and it was a van I could live out of full time. It's like a little dinky 40 Econoline 2002, but it had solar panels on top. I had purchased Starlink, so I actually had Wi-Fi anywhere I want, as long as I have access to the sky. Like I had Wi-Fi. So I would do these seasonal jobs where I go, let's say, to Wisconsin, and I work as a whitewater rafting guide for like 6 months during the summer, from April to sort of like October-ish. And I would work as a whitewater rafting guide, still try to put out at least one song a week. But then when October rolled around, it was in 2022 when I like thought, okay, October's coming around. I'm not going to have like a winter seasonal job until early December inside of the South Lake Tahoe area. And so what I did was I started organizing like a really big project, because I saw all this free time was about to happen, and I hadn't done too much with like putting out albums yet. So I organized what would eventually become a journey through the Hoenn region, where I like invited all these different artists from like Instagram, and I sort of like built a little community of people who would help me create this 35 track album of everything from all the songs from the soundtrack from Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. Did you ever play those games?
No, but I'm very close with people who grew up on it. I was a PlayStation kid, and so I rocked a PSP when they finally dropped a
Oh,
handheld.
that's sick.
Missed the whole Nintendo era, like early.
Really? Yeah. Jay, but you were playing like Assassin's Creed on the PSP, or like Ratchet and Clank, or
That's the one. Yeah.
that's
So I
awesome.
feel like
Yeah.
I regret that I wasn't born like a year or two earlier to hit that like
Mm,
N64 era. I think that would have sold me on it, but I was just like I'm a millennial through and through, or like just like the bridge between the end of the millennials and the Gen Z with like a lack of culture on both sides.
right. No, I know how you feel, because I was born in 2000, so I'm sort of like in that same weird area where I feel like I'm at the oldest of the Gen Zs, and I feel like I relate more with millennials. And the reason why I relate more with the millennials is because I had the 3 older brothers who, like, I got all of their hand-me-down stuff. It was actually when I was 8 years old, my brother Steven came down and met me at the Christmas tree with like a secret present. And he gives me his Game Boy SP, which at this point is probably like 6 years old or something. But he gives me this old Game Boy SP with the cartridge of Pokemon Sapphire. And that's where I fall in love with Pokemon. That was my first time when I was 8 years old that I got to go on like a Pokemon adventure. And I instantly fell in love with it. And I played that game over and over and over so many times.
It's locked in ever since. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, there was a lot of stuff you mentioned in your last piece you just covered. So I'm gonna be all over the place while I try and
Yeah.
ask detail-oriented questions. So first off, I really like this idea of roaming around in a van, pursuing gigs, doing like extreme outdoor sports, or at least helping to assist people doing that. It seems like you're following the work and making music that almost communicates the exact opposite of extreme or outdoor sports.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like a dramatic irony to it to me, I guess.
We
But
gotta be like floating around. Whoa. That's crazy.
perfect. We let me know if you need a pit stop to solve any technical
No,
errors.
I'm good.
Oh my gosh, lost my train of thought. So you're traveling around in a van. You have these older brothers who are involved in music, and they are all kind of both rebelling against the parental like oppressive thumb pushing down on them, but finding new ways to express that later on. And it sounds like you found your own
Yeah.
niche too. What drew you to lo-fi specifically of all the available genres? Was it just that communicability of that like early Nintendo nostalgia, or was there something more to it?
There's some it's funny because the whole point of like lo-fi is that like you're trying to get kind of the older sounds with like the vinyl crackle and everything. Um and it and having that, which is like pointing your mind like backwards in time, having that with something that was just so like um such like a staple of my childhood, the Pokemon. Like it reminds me of like going over to my friends' houses and like trading and doing battles and like all the fun we'd have playing Pokemon. So out of all the genres, I mean, I can't really think of another genre. You could just make normal covers, I guess. There's this guy named Zame, spelled Zame, on YouTube and on other places. Oh man, my cat just brought in a dead vole. That's crazy. That's so insane. Um,
Gift.
a gift. Okay, I do need a pit stop. I need to like take this creature out of my house. 1 second. Pippin, no.